This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is made in collaboration with the Jewish Journal. Check them out at jewishjournal.com. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, israelnationalnews.com. And last but not least, in collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, visit 2njb.com/donate. As the years progress, some young Jewish Americans feel more and more detached from their Jewish identity. Some are only half Jewish or quarter Jewish. Some don't even know about their Jewish roots. It is feared, therefore, that within a few generations, not much will be left of the American Jewish community. To battle this possibility, an initiative named Birthright was established in 1994. The idea was simple: bringing young Jews from around the world to Israel so they can understand their roots, get to know the country, and hopefully fall in love. Since then, more than 600,000 people participated in the project, 80% of them Americans and Canadians. It was a wild success. But now, as Corona has crept into our lives, the future of the entire operation is being put to the test. So what does the future hold for Birthright? And did the project achieve any actual results? To answer these questions, we are joined today by Gidi Mark. Gidi is the CEO of Taglit. He started his career as a diplomat and served the country of Israel in many embassies, including Istanbul, Bonn, and New York. He's been serving as CEO of Taglit since 2008 and has led it to impressive success. We're happy to be joined today by Gidi Mark to discuss Taglit, American Jewry, and much, much more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I am feeling great. Thank you.
So why not just let the American Jews fend for themselves, be?
Look, I work so hard to keep my family connected to myself, so let alone the bigger family, which is the rest of the Jewish people. And we work very hard in order to bring the awareness to the minds of Israelis. You know that when Birthright started, practically the idea came, as you said, came up from Yossi Beilin, then the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel in '94. And then we started really the real planning at the beginning of '98. And we started operations in December '99. Ever since, we had 650,000 people from 70 countries, plus 100,000 from Israel. So today we are the largest educational project in the Jewish world. We are actually the largest educational travel organization in the world, Jews and non-Jews alike. And we started from a very, very low point. Sometimes it's good to start from low, because when we started, only 2% of Jewish young adults used to come to Israel at the age of campus age, 18 and to 26. And out of the 2,000, which are 2%, it's a cohort of 100,000, we grew up to 48,000 2 years ago.
So 48%.
48%. And now unfortunately, we're going to, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because of COVID-19, but this year is going to be a low number year. But you know, we have a history of how many years? 3,000? 4,000? So
Israel, not Taglit. Jews.
No, the Jews, the Jews.
Jews, yes.
So even in the age of Taglit, with 20 years in operation, one season is not too much. I really am very unhappy with the fact that we don't have right now 40,000 planned participants here on the ground, seeing all the groups, all the people, all the buses, etc. But, you know, as Jews, we have long horizons to look at, and we are already starting to plan for upcoming winter and later seasons. And I know that the demand is going to be much higher next year, and I hope that we have the funds to fulfill all the demand. because we are going to have all the 30, 40,000 who could not come this summer, and they are going to be added to the regular demand of 50,000. So we are going to be bombarded by demand next year, and there are many, many Israelis who are waiting for them.
May I? May I?
We're both
I have
jumping.
a really good one.
Okay, go.
To be blunt, the most common critique, I would say, on Taglit is that, okay, the Israeli soldiers and students, they want to come, they want to go to Taglit to have sex with hot Americans. And the young Americans, they want to come to have sex with hot Israeli soldiers, and it's a free trip abroad.
Sounds like a successful, like a big success.
So, I mean, why should billionaires fund, like, this huge sex operation?
So since day one, we decided to measure only the output, not the input.
There's a lot of output.
And the output is measured by very, very strict 3 ripples. One is my own Jewish identity. Second, my relationship to a Jewish community. When we started, Jewish community meant synagogue, Jewish center, etc., and to the state of Israel. So, but today, Jewish community is not necessarily a synagogue anymore. As far as I'm concerned, number of our alumni who are involved, for example, in WhatsApp groups together with Israelis or the peers from worldwide, the number is around thousands. And there are more young Jews that are now connected to other Jews online on Birthright Israel WhatsApp groups than in all synagogues around the world put together. This is the new synagogue of the 21st century. In terms of, so we measure all the time, for example, the number of people who marry Jews, which is one of the 20 parameters that we are checking. After Birthright is growing by 40% as compared to the ones who signed up and did not end up coming.
So can you, that's like a KPI that you guys measure. Can you get into that a little bit more?
Yes.
What is it? How did it grow over the last 20 years or 30 years?
Yeah, so from the get-go, we have contracted with Brandeis University from Boston to measure everybody who comes to Israel, very high number of registrants, and unfortunately or fortunately, every year we have people who signed up and eventually could not come because of one reason or another. So we took them as a control group. And ever since, we keep comparing the first year to the participants of the first year, the second to the second, etc. And we see as if there are 2 complete separate communities of Jews who grow up mainly in the United States, because it's 75-80% of our participants, but all around the world. The ones who went on Birthright only for an interruption, actually, of 10 days are changing. They are changing not only because of what's happening here in Israel, but because of the fact that out of, let's say, 20-30% of their immediate friends who were Jewish before, it becomes 60%. So the whole environment, and we measure, for example, in terms of Israel, how many times do you follow Israel news coming from Israel? And I don't care if they follow the right side or the left side. As far as I'm concerned, how involved are you with what's happening in Israel? How many of you are keeping in touch with your Israeli peers, with your non-Israeli peers? And it's huge. It's hard to explain, but it's very visible.
So what's the actual number, though, for those marrying Jewish?
40% difference.
So 40% more for those who went on Birthright compared to the control group?
Yes.
Wow.
Unbelievable, right?
So it sounds like the stated goal is what Naor was mentioning.
No, it's...
How many children outside of marriage come out of it? That's the big question.
That's a KPI they're following, but not publishing.
Actually, what we really care about more than marriage is how people raise their children. And this is also a huge difference in raising children Jewish. And, for us, a participant is not necessarily a halachic Jew. Anybody who is a child of a Jewish parent is more than welcome. They come over to Israel, and you see many of them that are now serving in the army. Many of them, there is a project called Masa, The majority of the non-religious participants of Masa are alumni of Birthright.
What about Aliyah statistics?
I believe that the majority of the non-religious Olim are Birthright alumni. We don't measure, it's impossible to measure it because the Ministry of Absorption does not ask, have you been on Birthright? But we see hundreds of people.
Are you guys trying to get that in? Is there
no, this is not one of the goals, but I see that this is a result of what we do, and this is quite a painful point in what we do because we learn, and it's not one of our goals, so we don't follow it too much. But I know of too many very, very motivated young Jews who wanted to live near their new Israeli peers after they met them on Birthright, and then they felt isolated here socially, without friends, etc. And you probably know about it more than me. In the 70s and 80s, the assumption was that if we give the new immigrants tax-free cars, etc., they would stay, or money, they would stay in Israel.
Everything.
Yeah. And then the thing came to a job. But now I realize that the most important thing is really social absorption, community. And people need to have community. So we established a few years ago a community of the Israelis who participated in Birthright, and their first mission is to embrace the ones who made Aliyah and to give them some kind of social backing, and they do some parties, and they invite the ones who come over to Israel, so they feel that our slogans, that we all one big family, is really real reality. But we still have huge challenge in there. And time and again, I really feel that Israel, in Hebrew, I would say, אוהבת עלייה, אבל לא אוהבת עולים. I mean, we preach all the time, make aliyah, but once they come, I don't feel that we give them whatever they need, which is really social hug.
Just to translate, that's Israel loves immigration, but doesn't love the immigrants.
Yes. So you need to be like anything in Israel. You need to be stubborn. You need to be you need to be strong. And eventually, the ones who stay here for more than 2 years eventually are very, very grateful for coming over, because it's great to be a Jew in Israel. And only on the bus do the Israelis understand how privileged they are, how lucky they are that in Israel you need to work very hard in order not to be a Jew. In the United States, for example, the default is being a not Jew, and you need to work very hard to be a Jew. So the Israelis start to appreciate it only once they meet with their non-Israeli peers.
Yeah, I think the challenge is even tougher than just the 2 years than maybe what you're describing, because I know many people who went through, I guess what you would call like the most natural, like the naturalizing boot camp of Israel, which is the army, right? Yeah. And still after 3 years in the army, making some of the best friends they've ever made in their lives. Some of them had girlfriends here. Still, they were pulled back by this almost like unavoidable force to the States. I think one of the big things was family, meaning many of the people who moved
In-N-Out Burger.
In-N-Out, yeah, of course. It was actually mostly Californians. It's true. In-N-Out place seems to be a variable. But I do want to continue talking about Birthright purpose and also how you guys have been coping with COVID. But I do want to ask, I want to push the point one last time, even though I feel like it's going to be hard to get an answer that's like not very diplomatic out of you.
He is a diplomat.
I used to be a diplomat.
I know. We'll talk about that too. But what Noel mentioned, there is this stigma, and I wonder if like you guys are trying to fight the stigma, or if you actually think it's not it benefits you and are embracing it, or are you just ignoring it altogether?
First of all, it's a stigma. I'm not going to run the educational program around the stigma. The stigma has to do with some perceptions of Israelis that see groups of young people going together, having good time, so they do 1 + 0 and they get to 2. It's not necessarily true, but it's not something, if you ask me, it's not something that we measure, and we want eventually the participants to get really seriously they have the first time in their lives, I believe, 10 days that are dedicated to thinking about who they are. There used to be, when I lived in New York, there used to be a popular radio, 1010 Wins. So the slogan there was, you give us 20 minutes, we give you the world. So we give them not 20 minutes, we give them 10 days to have their own world. And it's really, the best thing is to see face-to-face an Israeli like a different mirror. And it gives them the opportunity to think, who am I? What's similar, what is not similar? And I think that it starts an internal dialogue. And it's very, very serious. And that's why you said that many of the people who come to Israel leave, but more stay. I have a nice story. I got a couple of years ago, I got a phone call. Shalom, I'm the outgoing commander of a paratroopers brigade, battalion. My wife is going to Philadelphia to do a postdoc, so I took a year of leave of absence, and I would like to volunteer for Birthright. And I told them, unfortunately, we are a very thin organization. We bring 50,000 a year, but we all together are 50 people, 50 employees, so we don't have any branch in Philadelphia. He said, I will be your branch in Philadelphia. I said, we don't need, thank you. It's all online. Why are you so interested? So he said, we used to, my last mission was to do the patrols around the Gaza Strip. And there were so many Americans in my platoons and my battalion. And when I would ask them, how did you come? They would tell me that they thought about going on Birthright because of their Israeli friends. And he said all of them came through Birthright, and I would like to give back now. So you see it all over.
It's a good story.
It's amazing. No, it's true though. I mean, many of the people I was on Garin Sabar and other Masa programs, and many of the people I knew I actually never was. I think because my connection was stronger in a way because my parents are Israeli. But many of the people that I met along the way, if not most of them, had been on Birthright at one point.
Yeah, we are looking for the people who are less connected. That's the truth. When we started, I am lucky to have been the first employee of Birthright Israel. I started even before we started the trips themselves. And I remember that when we started, I was in charge of marketing, and I spent millions on buying huge ads on
Times Square.
Non-Jewish newspapers, and it would say free trip to Israel, hurry up and register, Shana Tova to you and your family. It appeared in September before the winter of '99. We got an email. The emails were very new that time. So one of the emails was, "Dear Mr. Shana Tova, thank you very much for the invitation. I will come." Or the first year we really published the itinerary. So Thursday Yad Vashem, Friday at the Kotel. Somebody wrote to us, you have a typo, it should be Friday at the hotel, not the Kotel. So, but you know what? It's funny, but at the same time, only then we realized that we really touched on the right target. Yeah. Because only when you come on Birthright, you see that 90% of the participants are like you. You don't need to shy away of your Jewish identity. It's not your fault that your parents, that your community, that your whatever family did not give you enough Jewish background. So Birthright Israel is not going to make you a professor on Jewish studies, but it is going to ignite something in you. You can start a journey which is going to be your own Jewish journey until you die.
Nice.
Hopefully after 120 years.
Don't you have some moral issues with the fact that you bring those Jews who are, let's say, quarter Jews from their grandfather's side or something? You bring them to a country in which, if they make Aliyah, they will bury them outside of the graveyard and they won't let them marry.
Do you think that this is the only problem that we have worldwide? It's hard to be a Jew, whether you are in Israel or the United States. There are many things that we need to improve all the time. It's an issue of awareness. I can tell you that majority of Israelis are not aware of what it means to be a Jew outside of Israel. As far as I'm concerned, we don't decide who is a Jew, who is not a Jew. We decide who is a member of the Birthright Israel family, who is a participant, yes or not. And people need to make their minds after they come to Israel.
But you bring them to a complex country?
That's the great thing about Birthright, about Israel and about Birthright Israel, because we are very, very careful not to show them the right, only the right side of the politics or the left side of the politics, because we have such intelligent participants. You cannot sell them anything. They are smart enough to know exactly, and we try to be as open as possible and tell them, look, we don't have an answer, but we are here to entice you and to energize you to start asking questions. I'm not sure that you are going to get all the answers by the time that you die, hopefully after 100 years, but you have to look for answers the rest of your life. And this is Judaism. If you go back to the Gemara, if you go back to the Talmud, even in the Bible, you see huge discussions and huge debates, and this is Judaism, and it's great.
The stated goal, if I understood, of Birthright is not to actually get these Jews, these American Jews and Canadian Jews, to make Aliyah. It's more to strengthen their connection with Judaism, meaning you guys aren't even interested in the KPI of how many people make Aliyah. You're trying to connect them more. And then I guess it begs the question, like, is being a Jew outside of Israel, aren't you doomed anyway? I mean, shouldn't the ultimate goal be to bring them? Because, how much can you fight assimilation? If they are connected to their Judaism, they're going to have kids, and their kids will have kids. Eventually, it'll fade away.
So that's why people have to have a sense of mission. That's why people need to feel that they are Jews, because they chose to be Jewish. And that's why I'm speaking all the time about their own self journey. They will have to look for it and to find it. We don't give a recipe that is going to be 100% successful, but I'm not a defeatist. So I'm eternal optimistic. Look, I've
been spending too much time with this guy. You don't understand. He's the pessimist, and it's been rubbing off on me.
I'm very optimistic. We all of us like to complain all the time, but I believe
Part of being a Jew.
Yes, and I think that never in the history did the Jewish people enjoy such high level of everything, of education, of wealth, of security. In spite of some atrocities all over the world, but and I believe that my generation is the luckiest generation in the world. I'm not sure about your generation, because your generation is going to feel that life is a little bit harder than ours. But still, if you compare ourselves to 50 years ago, to 70 years ago, people here in Israel forget that only 70 years ago they had to have a coupon in order to have bread. So just to put things into proportion, I studied history, including Islamic history, but the history of the Middle East. And I think that our situation was never as good as it is today. So let's take things into proportion, including the COVID-19, etc. I wish overall that we go in this course for the future. Only about 72 years we did not have a Jewish state.
Mm-hmm. How important do you think the Jewish community in the United States is to, is this simply, like you said at the beginning, I care about my immediate family, so of course I'm going to care about my wider family. But how important do you believe the Jewish community in the States is to the existence of Israel, to the Israeli state?
I think not only important, essential. I think that Israel, without a support of a strong American Jewry, is a weaker country. We need the support of mainly American Jewry, but all Jews worldwide, not only morally. We need it financially, we need it strategically. I think that unfortunately Israelis don't understand the importance of world Jewry. They don't understand that we are the state of the Jewish people. We were the most important startup of the Jewish people in the 20th century. I try to claim that Birthright Israel is the best startup of the Jewish people in the 21st century. But
You got some big competition.
but Israel is a product of the Jewish people. And until today, as strong as we are, we should be aiming at being stronger. And strong American Jewish community is always strengthening Israel, be it in the White House, in the media, in the economy. And I start now to see the importance of the alumni of Birthright Israel, because now for the first time, they are starting to grow up and to start getting back to their community and giving back to their community and coming back to Israel. 40% of our participants come over to Israel within the first 5 years after they visited through Birthright.
Not to necessarily make aliyah, but just
Not to make
visit
aliyah,
again.
to visit, because we want them to feel that regardless where they live, Israel is their home.
Mm-hmm.
And they come back. And when they come back, they meet with their peers. And now, since we don't have physical participants in Israel, we are now going to start a huge campaign to reach out to our at least 50,000 until the winter, 50,000 alumni of ours who did not visit Israel or did not have the chance to be in touch with their friends. So we are going to ask all of our tour educators. We call them tour educators. These are tour guides that we educated about Jewish world Jewry and how to conduct Havdalah or Kiddush. Unfortunately, not all the Israelis know it.
Mm-hmm.
So we really gave them an education, and basic Jewish education, so they could become Jewish educators. So we are going to have hundreds of them reach out to their alumni worldwide and start a dialogue. Eventually, we thought that there are some projects that we could launch together, including, for example, building a huge family tree of the Jewish people that people from the group and from other groups could find. And we tried it, and it really is working. Find some relatives that are very close to them, and that will give them an opportunity to reach out to their grandparents who are now locked in elderly houses in quarantine. So that could be a good way for them to communicate and give the older people the feeling, right feeling, that they have an advantage over the younger ones because they know the history of the family. So this is only one of the projects.
What about
that we are
seniors, Taglit?
doing.
If we're talking about...
So this is the 10th time that I'm asked about it in the last 1 month. Everybody
I'm a
asked us-
cliche.
No, because you asked only 10 times.
Great minds.
You are the only 10th. So we think about ourselves as being the bridge that connects the future of the Jewish people from one side of the ocean and to the second one. And actually, the newest project of Birthright Israel is called Birthright Israel Excel, that we have established in order for it to become the foundation, financial and leadership foundation for this vibrant bridge. And it is very, very selective. As much as Birthright Israel bring 50,000 people out of, let's say, 60 or 70,000 applicants, because we cannot have enough money for everybody, but almost everybody can come on Birthright. But for Excel, only 50 are accepted every year out of 2,000 applicants. It's the most selective project in the Jewish world today. And they come to Israel for internship for 10 weeks. And they have an Israeli soulmate, either from 8200 unit or from IDC in Herzliya or one of the leading faculties of other universities in Israel. They spend together for 10 weeks. And then they start their own communities, both in Israel, United States, Canada, Mexico, and this year we started to have participants from UK, and we would like to become a community, worldwide community of business leaders that are going to have the sense of responsibility for the for their own community and to be future investors in Israel's economy.
So how is this connected to the senior, the older adult
So
community?
we shall wait about 20, 30 years until they are becoming seniors.
Okay, I see. So how are you guys actually, I mean, you mentioned that you're doing this family tree stuff. Is there also kind of maybe an effort to do remote, like on Zoom or?
Yes. So, for example, this
Yeah.
year, the Excel community is doing its internships remotely, and it's the first ever remotely internship that is global and being done in Israel, and it's working very well. I'm surprised. And we are waiting for the first day that people are going to be allowed. So are going to bring them over as participants of Birthright so they could see face to face the people that they've been working with in the last, I believe, 3 weeks already. So this is one. Secondly, we are building now 2 prototypes of virtual tours. One is more automatic, which is going to be built on the platform of a company called Interlude. And people are going to be able to choose. They go, for example, to Caesarea, and they have about 20 options in Caesarea. They will be able to click for example, for the Hippodrome, and the tour guide is going to go there together with some Israeli participants and non-Israeli participants, and they will get an explanation. This is one. The second thing that we are now embarking on, we are waiting now for final approvals, is that a tour guide would go with a camera and will be connected to a group, mainly for high schoolers, mainly in English-speaking countries, and they are going and is going to ask them, okay, I'm in Caesarea, where do you want me to go? So here on the left you have one, on the right you have the second. What would you want it to go? And,
Interactive.
yeah, very interactive, voting, prizes,
Wow.
etc.
That's
Cool.
awesome. That's really cool and innovative also. So I want to talk a bit about, I mean, we talked about Birthright, but I want to get a bit into, like, we don't have much time left, but I want to get a bit into your life story and where you came from. Because as we mentioned, and as you mentioned also, you used to be a diplomat. So how did you get from serving in embassies around the world to
Were you
to
a
leading-
diplomat or a Mossad agent?
Okay, that answers it.
I was a diplomat. I went through the cadet course of the Foreign Ministry of Israel. Actually, when I first of all, I'm very lucky to be where I am now. And when I was young, my mother used to tell me, you must behave, because if you grow up and you become a diplomat, I don't want them to say that you had a bad manners because of your mother. So, so actually, I became a diplomat, and I served in some countries in England, and before I was a diplomat, I served in England, and then I served in Turkey.
You must have amazing stories.
I have amazing
Give us like
stories.
the craziest story that happened to you on an embassy.
I have amazing story. First of all, I served during the first Intifada in Istanbul, which is, of course, an Islamic Muslim country. And when I came to, actually I studied Turkish because when I came to the Foreign Ministry, I had known Arabic already. So I had to study in the university. I had to study another language, and I chose Turkish. And I was the only one in the Foreign Ministry, I think, in my age that spoke Turkish. So they sent me to Turkey. And as soon as I came, the Intifada started, the unrest of the people in the West Bank.
89.
Exactly.
Yeah.
88. And I remember that people started to curse me over the phone in Turkish, and I would answer them automatically in Arabic. Only then I realized. So by the time that I really digested and understood that I'm in Turkey, I was moved like any good diplomat to Germany. So then it was again, Israel always is loved by a minority and disliked by a majority in some countries, but people used to, and then I used to be in charge of public affairs. So I used
What year is it? in Germany?
it was
After 91?
It was 88 to 90.
Just on the brink of...
Exactly, but so I used to have a suitcase that I would leave my home on Monday, give about 10 lectures around the country in Germany about Israel and the Middle East. And again, I would meet with many, many Arabs, but then I would answer them in Turkish because until I realized that I was in Turkey, I spoke in Arabic. When I moved to Germany, I started to speak Turkish because it took me some time to understand that I'm in Germany.
You were in Berlin when you were in Berlin?
I was in Berlin on November 9th, 1989.
That's amazing.
I learned the history, but not because of that I remember it. My second son, Avner, was born a year before. So this was his birthday, so that's why I'll never forget the date.
Really, they tore down the wall on his birthday.
Yeah. And I was invited by I was the representative of the Israeli embassy from Bonn to represent it at the Central Synagogue in Berlin for the ceremony of the Kristallnacht, which is the same night. So during the event, people starting to rush out, and I asked what's happening. They said they are destroying the wall. It was really a historic.
Wow! Did you get a piece of the wall?
After 3 years, I got a piece from a friend of mine who was with me, and he said you had to go back to Bonn. So here's the piece that I saved for you. Yeah. So I really had the chance over then, and also in New York when I was working my last day as a diplomat in New York, I was walking in the street and I bumped into Yossi Beilin, who came up with the idea 3 years before. And he said, "Hi, Gidi, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to bid farewell to my staff at the Israeli consulate. I used to be the spokesman and in charge of public affairs. And where do you go?" I said, "Tonight I fly back to Israel. My family is already there." He said, I just met with two Jewish philanthropists, Charles Bronfman and Michael Steinert. Do you know them? I said, "I heard about them. I don't know them." So they are interested in investing in my program, and they would like to build a strategy around it. Are you interested? I said yes. And he said, "Okay, let's have breakfast." So we had breakfast, and he said, "When can you start?" I said, "Tomorrow." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." So, "Okay, you will hear from me." So after a month, I got a phone call from the director of Michael Steinert. "We heard from Yossi Beilin that you may be interested. When can you come over for an interview with Charles Bronfman, Michael Steinert?" I said, "Tomorrow." And indeed, after 2 days, I bought a ticket, I flew in, and after 2 months, I started Birthright, and actually, I was lucky enough to be the first employee.
Nice.
So that's what I'm saying always to young people. If you believe in something, go for it. Eventually, you are going to be the luckiest person.
This was in when? In 90?
This was, I left the embassy in New York in August 97, and I started, my official first day was January 1st, 98.
So you've been working in Birthright. You were working in Birthright for 10 years before you came CEO in 2008.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. And you've been CEO since then. So you've been
so
at
22
Birthright
years,
for 22. Wow.
Years, yeah.
That's a long time.
It's longer. Is it longer than your diplomatic career already?
Yes. I was a diplomat for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And 22 years on Birthright.
So most sad story, an agent, something, a secret document, something sexy from your diplomatic years.
You had to tranquilize the wife of, I don't know, prime minister or something.
Look, I served in the, actually I served in the Israeli intelligence as an officer, but this was my last intelligence role in my life, and I think that serving the Jewish people, really, it's a big word, is much more important because really we change a course of a people of 4,000 years, and when I see Birthright, I really understand how people need always to say never, because in 1990, that's why Birthright was established, because for the first time people were, wow, the majority are marrying out. We are doomed. There is going to be no Jewish people within 50 years.
The
What
silent
happened?
Holocaust.
Yeah,
right?
so people, all the numbers went down, and look what's happening now. We are we are the strongest ever. We are the wealthiest ever, and I think that we need to usually look for the bright side in order to continue, and we should not disregard the threats, etc. But I think that after 3,000-4,000 years, we are smart enough, as long as we are not too arrogant, we are smart enough to navigate our future to a better place.
You know,
Okay.
they say just because you're paranoid doesn't mean no one's chasing you.
Yes, but even if you are paranoid, you should be always stronger than your enemies.
Yeah, and then your paranoia.
And you're paranoid.
Okay, so we got to wrap things up. Before we go, anything like what can we plug? People who are interested, they can go, where do they go?
The line is going to be very big, but you always have to be optimistic, because we are going to embrace each and every one. We are not allowed to give up on any Jew who wants to explore. We don't have answers. Come over with tens of thousands who would like to learn as much as you do, and we are going to be as open as possible. And the decision maker is you, not us.
But where can you go and sign up if you're
What's the-
interested?
Birthright,
What's the website?
www.birthrightisrael.com. We are waiting for you.
And you're on social media also.
And we are on social media, believe me. We are, I believe, the most proliferant Jewish organization today on the website, on the web, actually. And you can find us everywhere.
Amazing.
Amazing.
All right, we'll put links also with the video.
Yes. Before we go, we have a collaboration with the Jewish Journal. Check them out, jewishjournal.com, for podcasts, interesting content about Jews in America and whatnot.
Yes.
Also,
And we have a collaboration with Ot Sheva here in Israel, israelnationalnews.com. It's an English news website. Check them out, guys. They have great content, israelnationalnews.com. They're also on Facebook.
yes. And also in Australia, the Australian Jewish News, ajn.timesofisrael.com. Also worth checking out, guys. And of course,
We do this on our free time, so we accept donations, guys.
can you talk to Sheldon
NJB.
for us? Maybe Sheldon would give
Right.
something.
Look, we are now done. Why didn't you ask me before?
Sheldy, if you're listening, 2njb.com/donate if you guys want to help us out. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much for coming.
Actually, if I may say,
Yes.
we used to bring 25, 35, 25, 28,000 participants, and when the Edelsons came over, they really doubled the number. It's
Amazing.
huge.
Wow. That is incredible.
מה ששלהם שלהם, as they say in Hebrew.
It's really, it's much bigger because of that.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you
It's been
very much.
amazing.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.